Welcome back, and welcome back to the goats, the gift that just keeps on giving. So the last video was an update on the truck and the repairs that we did and how far we've come. So we've actually taken a few steps back, believe it or not. So fast forward to December, we had a really cold snap and I went out to start the old goat and I heard a really ominous sound coming from the engine bay. It didn't sound very familiar, obviously throughout the time that I've owned her, and the short period of time, and subsequently found a diesel leak coming from the diesel pump. So I'm not sure if it was the cold or what's happened, and obviously it's moved some of the gaskets. It's a possibility. However, it basically sprung the rest of the restoration into high gear. So I got the diesel pump removed. I've got some footage on that. This little bad boy, you probably remember, was rusted on the lid, and there was a few areas that were rusty and dirty. So we've been spending time cleaning that up, getting it ready to send out to Diesel Bob. He's going to have a good crack at this. Now, I suspect the leak is basically coming from this area here. It was quite oily when we stripped the pump off, so I suspect it's from there. I don't want to do any sort of fixes myself. I want to send this for a full service and sort of refurb and basically reset to factory standard. Just so that I've got a benchmark to work from. Everything is basically zeroed. And then when we get this back in the truck, we set it correctly, make sure the timing is correct, work on all that, and then we've got a good baseline to work from, and then we can go from there on what it looks like out. And when I got it back, it looks absolutely incredible. It looks brand new, all done by Diesel Bob, so huge thanks to him. He did a really great job, and he did find some catastrophic damage inside the diesel pump, which is I'm really grateful that I actually sent the pump up to him to get repaired. It is a very complex item, so it's not something that I wanted to tackle by myself by any point, because of just how complex these pumps are. So I gave it up to the expert, and it cost me £730. So yes, it was a very expensive exercise, but it was completely worth it. The pump is done, and it'll probably run for another 30 years if looked after. So it's back in now, and it's running really good. There's loads of power in the engine bay now, so the truck is running so well. Plenty of power. It was surprising to see the difference between the old pump and the new pump, and just what the truck was capable of doing. Really eye-opening, which is really great. So in that time, everything was going well. I was driving the truck to work, and then we subsequently had a breakdown, believe it or not. So what happened is the fuel cutoff solenoid cable on the back of the pump broke, and without me knowing, and you try and crank the motor, and if that fuel cutoff solenoid is not energized in any way, you will not deliver any fuel to the injectors, and basically the engine will not run. These are very basic motors to get running, and I just couldn't understand what was going on. So I subsequently hot-wired the solenoid in a way that to check that the solenoid was working, and subsequently by doing that I noticed where my problem was coming from to a degree. So we've kind of narrowed it down, which has helped quite a lot. So by energizing the fuel cutoff solenoid, we've actually engaged the two relays, the starter relays. So I know that is my issue. So when I turn the key, the relays do not energize. But when I hot-wired the solenoid, delivered power there, the two relays pulled in. alive! It's alive! So I'm not getting power from my ignition to the relay, so I need to figure out where this issue is. If you have an idea, please let me know down below. It'll really help out. I'm not a let's say a wiring from ignition guru. I'm quite well versed with most wiring jobs, but this is something that is a bit black magic to me at the moment, so I just need to figure this out. So if you've got an idea, please let me know. It will really help. Anyway, so in the meantime, we have done rebuilt the front diff. Okay, so we've got the diff out. Everything looks nice and healthy, which is great. Good news. I didn't suspect anything was, you know, broken or damaged in any shape or form. So going on to the main point why we stripped the diff out is because I forgot one component. So now, if I didn't have to do any of the axle reinforcement, I would literally still have to go through this whole process to get to one component, which is very frustrating. So top tip for you guys, if you are servicing your diff, make sure you get all your consumables. So if you're doing all the bearings or all the stuff, ensure that you have your crush washers, you have all your seals, all your bearing races, all the bearings, everything is there before you strip your diff, before you even start undoing any bolts on the vehicle. When I got the kit, I just basically cracked on, got overexcited, and because my main focus was the bearing. We saw the bearing and it was completely shot, and we knew it was the bearing that needed changing. I didn't suspect the crush washer would be that far gone. It did last for a couple 100 miles, but it wasn't enough. The amount of adjustment we had in the rear nut to create that pressure on the bearings wasn't enough, so we're back to here again. So luckily we're doing all this reinforcement and we had to strip the axle anyway, so this is okay. So hopefully this mistake doesn't obviously affect you guys. So I want to show you the difference. There's a clear difference between old and new. So you can see the deformation in the old, how it's almost, you know, concaved out here, and obviously how nice and straight that new one is. Now this is the difference in not only shape but in height. We've got 3 to 4 mil in height there in difference, and that's all the amount of pressure and the amount of distance we required to balance the two bearings. So in short, you've got your pinion gear. Now this is what this end here sticks out of your diff. That has one nut on there, and that has a flange attached to that. And on that flange, you've got your front prop shaft. Once your front prop shaft engages this pinion, it spins this, and then that engages your ring gear inside your diff, and that in turn turns your front wheels. Now, in order for this to turn nice and fluid and nice and straight, there's two bearings. You've got your main pinion bearing, and then you've got your outer or your rear pinion bearing. And to keep those two in sort of unison between each other and the correct amount of pressure, you have this crush washer. And then once you tighten this bolt or this nut down at the back, it creates pressure and it sort of equalizes the two together and keeps everything nice and sturdy, nice and straight, and then enough pressure as well. So now that is worn out, over time, crush washers are, I didn't realize, were a consumable, and there is adjustments. So as things wear out, bearings start setting in, you go around and you tighten everything down again. So that's what allows this crush washer to crush down a little bit more to give you that flexibility and that adjustment over time. And we're not talking about a few months or anything, we talk about quite a few years, and depending on how much you off-road and stuff. So that is just a small insight into what that crush washer does, and why it's there. And it's such a cheap component. I think it is like £15 or something like that. But if you weren't stripping down an axle for any sort of reinforcement or anything like that, you'd be this would be a very expensive mistake. So I am quite grateful that I'm doing other things that I had the opportunity to change this, and now we can set the backlash correctly, because there's a little bit too much backlash there. I'm not happy with how much backlash is in there, especially I felt it on the sort of when I got the truck back the first day. It felt okay, but as obviously everything's bed in, I could tell that the backlash wasn't set correctly, so in what I needed it to be set. So what we're going to do now is get the crush washer back in, get it back in the diff, get everything set, and then we can move on to the next thing. That's all been redone. All the bearings, the preload has been done correctly. The diff backlash has been set correctly. It's much better now. Pulls really, really well. The whole front axle has been rebuilt. We've also welded in and fabricated the steering box reinforcement kit. Because we found quite a few cracks in that area, so that's all been cut out and welded back in. So that's come out really, really well. So in terms of getting all the work done in that sort of the front end area, that's all been rebuilt. We haven't gotten any oil leaks anywhere, which is really good. Means all the seals, everything has been done correctly. In that time, we've changed the water pump, we've changed the timing belts, the new pump has gone back in and that's set correctly and she's running sweet. And then we put in a new fuel priming filter. That's gone in, and then we've done braided hoses just to make it look a bit nice, and I got rid of all the rubber hoses that were obviously perishing and they were struggling. So we've renewed that area and we're going to slowly go through things in that sort of sense. So if you guys have any comments or suggestions or anything like that, let me know down below. I really appreciate all the support we get from all you guys out there. The truck is obviously going through a massive transformation at the moment and getting ready for a big trip. We are heading into Europe. I'm really looking forward to that, so I need to get a lot of stuff done. So the series and the restoration project, a series of videos that we're going to be doing is going to be just that. We're going to be doing obviously a lot of motor work, we're doing interior work, we're doing a draw system, we're doing suspension, tires, you name it. It's all going to be there prior to the trip and then the trip itself. So it should be a good series to watch. So again, thank you very much for your support, and we will definitely see you in the next one.
If I'm not back in 5 minutes, just wait longer.